Shane Murphy here, entrepreneur and restaurant marketing expert. Welcome to the Restaurant Rocket Fuel podcast, where we discuss marketing strategies that leading restaurateurs are using to grow and expand their restaurants. This podcast is sponsored by Boostly, the text marketing company that works with every point of sale and online ordering vendor in the industry. No contracts, no monthly fees. Learn more at boostly.com. Welcome back, everybody. Today we are joined by Danny Klein. He's the editorial director for the QSR and FSR magazines, which are largely considered to be the largest resources for the restaurant industry news and insights. And so, Danny, we're super excited to have you on the show today and to get your perspective on the industry and the things that you're seeing. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me and for the nice plug there. I like to agree with you on that front.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry a long time, and QSR and FSR have always been super powerful ways for me to glean insights. And so I've been really looking forward to this conversation today. Maybe before we do just dive in, could you take a minute or two and just tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got involved with the industry in the first place here?
Yeah, sure. So I have been with QSR and FSR for about 9.5 years, maybe a little less, over 9 years, however you look at it. Before that, I was a sports writer throughout the North Florida area. Started out in St. Augustine, which is a small beach town near Jacksonville, and then ended up going to Daytona Beach for a couple of years. In terms of how I got here, very typical newspaper story. I was in the process of being laid off along with the rest of my entire department, and in searching for jobs, somehow ended up on a company called Food News Media in North Carolina, which was at the time the parent company of QSR and FSR. It has since gone to different ownership. We're part of WTWH Media. But anyhow, yeah, just kind of was looking for something so I would stay working, and ended up kind of finding a world that I didn't know existed. I was not familiar with B2B media in general. I had spent my whole life on the consumer side of newspaper journalism, and then also restaurants and hospitality. Didn't know what QSR stood for, didn't know what FSR stood for, didn't know what mise en place meant or any of these things. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a leap of faith, and one that was brought about by circumstance. But, honestly, it was one of the best turns of events in my whole life. So I have nothing but perspective on how lucky I was to just kind of fall into this.
Oh, that's fabulous. Sometimes life, picks us up from the ashes, and those good opportunities just come out of nowhere. So that's fabulous.
Yeah, very, very random. I wouldn't say I liked it the first 2 years. But I grew, and that was just, I just felt like I had no idea what I was doing, because I was so used to being a sports writer. It was everything that I had always thought I was going to be. My father wanted me to be a sports writer. It was such like an embedded part of my personality that's what I was going to do and how I identified myself. And so it took an adjustment period there to realize, and then I would tell people what I do, and they would always think I was reviewing 5-star restaurants. And you'd be like, no, I'm writing about Burger King. But it's such a fascinating industry, as you know, and the people within it are mostly amazing. And so you really do get hooked very quickly. And that happened to me. And like I said, 9 years later now, it's the best. I just couldn't be happier to be involved within the restaurant trade space, and also for the company and the brands that I work for. I have a very deep love for QSR and FSR at this point. We're launching new platforms in the last 2 years, and these feel like extensions of myself.
Yeah.
And just to have had that opportunity to create a conference, which will be in 13 days from now here on August 21st, and then another conference in in November, or not November, in February. So yeah, I'm very grateful that life turned out the way it did on this professional front.
That's great. You have such a unique view of the industry as a writer and a reporter. You just get exposure constantly to, I think, a wide variety of things, like the threats that restaurant owners are facing, the opportunities that are in front of them, how these things converge. Maybe what are some of the challenges that you've observed the industry has been facing recently?
Yeah, I mean, where to begin? I will say the restaurant industry, anyone who's within it knows that no matter what period of time you ask an operator that question, there's always a lot of things on their mind. It's just it is not an easy business to be successful in. I would say the greatest myth out there, especially in franchising, is that it's a passive income business to open up a restaurant, which is not at all the case. But specific to this current time, of course, emerging out of this COVID fog and all that, it's really just the reality of the inflationary environment of what things cost, and whether it's labor or the commodities, it's real estate, or, what's become very difficult access to capital. If you're a franchisee and you signed a 5-store deal, getting stores 3 to 5 open is not easy at all right now. And so all these things end up resulting in one very clear signal to the consumer, and that's higher prices on the menu. And so there's so much going on right now about what that means. The reflection of, you have McDonald's on earnings calls kind of talking about that value standing and how they're ceding some of it and trying to work to get it back. And if they're having that challenge with what, we would call like a lower income cohort, whatever that might be to different brands, 45,000 and under in McDonald's case, there's a lot less traffic happening right there. And it's because they're eating at home. They're, getting rid of the lunch day part, which tends to be really easy to replace. Breakfast, which is one of the highest margin businesses in QSR, is also being replaced. You see this at Starbucks right now with the fact that people are electing to make their coffee at home. So there's a lot of consumer spend just going to what they're removing. It's not so much that they're not going to restaurants, they're just going less frequently. And so if that's the case, trying to battle for that value customer has become really, really difficult. That's why you see all these $5 meal deals in QSR right now. And, how profitable is that? And okay, and if you're going to have that, what are you going to balance out with on the other side of the barbell and all these kind of things? So I would say right now, that's the biggest thing is traffic, trying to clarify your value proposition. And then if you're a brand whose value proposition is not rooted in price, like say a First Watch, you're almost weathering the traffic storm a little bit so that you can get out on the other side in really good shape. So that's a question right now that faces a lot of brands is what is this, if you're going to discount or you're going to do really big promotions, what happens when this sort of tapers off? And so that's the era that we're in right now is hyper value focused guest who is pushing back on things. And where that takes restaurants, I would say is the biggest thing at the moment.
Yeah. Often when these types of challenges are facing our industry, and you're right, like there's a never ending supply of challenges. And the moment that one kind of is coming to a next wave, another one is moving in. But often there are opportunities that get created at the same time. And you have a unique opportunity from your vantage point to see not only the challenges and the changes in the times, but also how innovation and opportunities kind of converge surrounding some of those challenges. Maybe can you speak from that vantage point on opportunities and ways that people are going about managing the traffic and the value equation?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We just kind of got through what we would call your summer earnings season, and you could see some winners. Like Texas Roadhouse is a good example of this. They've been very cautious in the price that they've taken throughout this, last couple of years. But for them, it isn't so much the price; it's the execution. They're becoming better at actually running their restaurants with some technology, wait list, pay at the table. Yet at the same time, just making sure that their value is very clear on a couple of fronts, whether it's what the abundance in the product, no shrinkflation, and just also the fact that for relative value and the experience you get, making sure they're staffing up, all these things that they continue to be an outlier. And then you see a brand like Chili's, who just had an amazing quarter that was so far outside what is happening for most casual dining brands. And they really did it through, a value message where they went really directly at McDonald's. It wasn't veiled. Yeah. Kind of saying, if you're going to pay the same amount of money for this big smasher burger that we're offering that you're paying at McDonald's, look what we're giving you that's more. And it's beyond just like what you're getting on the plate, but also in the experience. And they, through TikTok and other social media, ended up just having this incredible stretch here. So that allowed them, if you really look at it from an opportunity perspective, they took this climate and they spun it in a way that they could advantage themselves by using a marketing message that would not have been there before if this kind of blurring of the price lines didn't exist. And so I think you're seeing that a lot of brands right now, like Shake Shack is another one, talking about kind of this gap between themselves and QSR is shrinking. And so they're able now to look at that and, change the perception a little bit of what value means, and then you just see crazy innovations. I mean, just this morning, I posted this Chick-fil-A story where they're opening, I think it's tomorrow on August 22nd, a 2-story drive-through that has the capacity to serve 75 cars at one time. Wow. Right. So that is that's obviously not a reaction to value and what's happening at this present moment, but that is a reaction to what came out of 2020. Yeah. It looks a lot like the Taco Bell version of that, which also was a reaction to things, but done in a very Chick-fil-A manner. I would say the difference between the two, because there's been a lot of discussion about that today, is the Taco Bell version is really like a contactless apex, as I call it, of what that experience could look like if you want to go get food without, really slowing down at all. And the Chick-fil-A version is really a exercise in just volume. They're going to be able to deliver just an astronomical figures out of that location. Yeah. And they're really a reflection of the fact that they have the ability to move cars so quickly and effectively with the way that they operate. So I think that's what you're seeing kind of on a broad sense. You see the marketing, you see the value, you see brands being able to kind of clarify who they are to the consumer. And then you're seeing the innovation on the technology front, across all sorts of brands, whether it's voice ordering at the drive-thru, which Taco Bell is rolling, to this 2-story location that I mentioned and beyond. So it's a really exciting time in a lot of ways, even though it's very challenging.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. Coming from the standpoint of running a software company and interfacing with investors and things there, it's interesting seeing external, like macro views of the restaurant space. And I've never been more bullish on what's happening in restaurants and where things are heading. I think that, that inflationary environment that you're discussing really has impacted a lot of current things that people are trying to just come together and innovate around. But all of that is just a short period, and everyone is upping their game in every level of their business. Restaurants are getting more efficient. They're getting better at communicating to their guests. They're really sitting down and saying, what is the value that we bring beyond just price? Because price is like, you can't survive on just the low margin when traffic is pulling back. And so as we go into the future, I'm really optimistic about where things come, because restaurants are going to be better equipped than ever before. And then we'll get a tailwind. And what are those brands going to do and accomplish? It's going to be incredible.
Yeah, I would say that this current landscape is a little bit of a zero-sum game, which is really good for the consumer. And I wrote articles about this coming out of the pandemic a little bit, where basically quick service in particular really had no choice but to get better. And it wasn't so much, the COVID didn't invent a lot of the trends you see in quick service now, like the order confirmation boards of the drive-through and, kiosks and a lot of this other technology and things of that nature. All it did was just force that innovation cycle to speed up in a way that operators were historically, as a category, very slow.
Yeah.
Restaurants have this thing. I mean, this is definitely true in independence, of course, but they operate on their gut, right? What do the consumers want? Well, I'm in here every day. I can try to tell you, but that isn't so much how it happens now. And the guest was really pushing restaurants toward a lot of, convenience fueled things, to the contactless options, to the mobile order ahead, of the ability to have the different variety of omni-channel experiences, to kind of operate your food on your own terms, which is how, if you look at the rest of retail, I mean, retail was here years before food service was. You call it an Amazon effect or whatever. Just this idea that if you want to go get something, like, you do it how you want to do it. You either go to Macy's, although I guess they're closing a lot of stores, but you can go to the mall if you want, or you could order it and, get that email confirmation within seconds. But the order point in food procurement hadn't changed all that much. I mean, the point of sale in particular, like, that's ripe for innovation right now, because it hasn't changed since the cashier got flipped out. But all these things QSR is new. It's not as though it weren't on the whiteboard 5 years ago. They just were kind of not, there wasn't as much of a sense of urgency. And so, to your point, beyond the fact that you had to do this during COVID because you had to reach guests outside the cafe, at this stage, you're looking at a consumer who, maybe they go out to eat 3 days a week instead of 5. And so who are you at this point to that person? And if you didn't know before, you're probably not going to survive. So that middle ground between the experiential and the transactional is fading a little bit. And again, the person who wins there is the consumer. Because Taco Bell and McDonald's and Burger King, I mean, if you look at Burger King, it's a really good example. I mean, they're spending, hundreds of millions of dollars right now to update their asset base on this sizzle design and to become a more modern restaurant company that offers you variety in your ordering choice, more focus on the drive-through, locations that don't look like, they're about to crumble, and kiosks inside. And so they're becoming better much, much quicker because they understand the stakes at hand. And it's not like people look at Burger King and go, man, that's expensive. Like, it's Burger King, right? However, your value can be defined in so many more channels now that they're in a race to really become better. And so is everybody else. And so, like you said, I do think that there's a bullish kind of horizon here, because the quick service industry was forced to maybe go 10 years in 2 years.
Yeah.
And now at this stage is really more optimizing, that innovation. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I do think that everyone is getting better, or at least trying to get better and figuring out what it is they need to focus on.
Absolutely. Now, Danny, this has been super fun. Thank you for sharing all these stories. I think you really highlighted some really awesome examples from everything from, like, how Chili's went about, optimizing their messaging for the value equation, how Texas Roadhouse approached it, how, we are facing these traffic challenges and value definition challenges, and how we need to optimize through innovation. This has been awesome with all the examples that you've given. How can the audience keep following and getting in touch with these types of insights through either you or the magazines that you're a part of?
Yeah, well, I would say, obviously we have two websites, QSRmagazine.com and FSRmagazine.com. On both sides, there are newsletters you can sign up for that are completely free. The magazine is also free if you're a print copy type of person. You just need to be a qualified restaurant professional, which covers a lot of things, of course. But so you can get it in print, you can get it online. Both things are delivered and free to your inbox or mailbox. And then, I would just say social media, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I post there all the time. I don't really believe in any other channel at the current moment. All our editorial staff are very active on there, as are our two pages. And yeah, in-person events, that's kind of on my mind right now. I don't know when this is airing. It might be after I've actually survived or not survived our September 3rd through 5th event that's coming up here. But that's something we launched last year and has become, a very big thing that we do. And that's, of course, if you want to come and just see people in person and have these conversations from the stage. So yeah, I would start with social media and the websites and go from there.
Awesome. Well, Danny, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm sure we'll try to drive as many followers as we can, because this was some gold today. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Restaurant Rocket Fuel. And thank you to the amazing restaurateurs that work so hard to provide an amazing guest experience for our communities. Again, this podcast is sponsored by Boostly. To see how we can drive more revenue to your business, visit boostly.com. Don't forget to subscribe and go out there and maximize the potential that you and your business have in front of you.